Okay, so we're just waiting on Bob, looks like.
I think Bob will not be able to make it.
Okay. In that case, then, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can you do a roll call?
Yes, I can. Director Brandt?
Here.
Director Geist is absent. Director Bertrand?
Here.
Director Freeman?
Here.
Director Hedges?
Here.
Director Nguyen?
Here.
How's it going? And Director Thurlow?
Here.
Great. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now we're going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items that they wish to pull?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Thurlow. Is there any public comment? Any further discussion? All those in favor, actually, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Aye.
Director Bertrand?
Aye.
Director Hedges?
Aye.
Director Thurlow?
Aye.
Director Nguyen?
Aye.
Great, motion passes 6-0 with one absence. Now we're going to move to the public comment period. This is the time for any member of the public who wishes to speak on any matter that is not currently on our agenda to do so. The board will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided for by law. Are there any requests to speak on items off agenda? All right, I will go ahead and close the comment period. We're going to move to discussion action items. The first on our agenda is the police brutality and anti-racism work group update. So I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan to talk a little bit about some developments since the last time that we met.
Great, thank you. We have a good number of developments. A few, as you can see, made it onto our agenda today, which are going to be other topics, and they moved up in the listing, and some topics moved a little further out into the calendar, such as the Sobering Center. We're going to have a really good report for you on August 25th meeting. I felt like it was worth it to push it to have more people present and more information available. Another issue that's going to need to get pushed and do need some board direction on pursuing is the data agenda item, which the board requested, a good while ago now, and we're at a point where we need board direction in terms of developing a Public Records Act request. So we got word from IV Foot Patrol that they're going to need us to submit formal requests, and those requests, are a formal process. It is something that needs to be, worked on to be put together and submitted. And there's a set timeline of when a request like that has to be, met. And so if we want to do a request like that, which we will have to do for the data we'd like to acquire, it would be a good idea to get the request to be a little more full and make a lot of requests at once instead of doing one at a time, which would be nice because we could see the information and make future requests based off of it. And just to reiterate, the request we did make that our work group was talking about is, let me read it verbatim, which is all the arrests and citations along with penal code number in Isla Vista for the years of 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2013. And that matches Those dates are matching the dates that Deputy Schroeder sent to us for the data that's related to the Sobering Center research. So that's what we requested. I think right now we'd just like to know, is there anything else we should be putting into this request? Different dates, different types of interactions with law enforcement, anything, so that if we did put something together, if that's the direction the board wants to go in, we can only maybe do one or two instead of doing many.
Thank you for that update, Jonathan. So it sounds like something, I guess things have changed a little bit since the last time that we talked as a board. And I was wondering if there anyone here from the sheriff's office who can speak to that a little bit and give some more context.
Yeah, Deputy Schroeder's here on the call. What is the specific question, I guess?
Yeah, so we're talking about the need to submit a public records request to obtain some of this data that we've been talking about. And I know in the past it sounded like we wouldn't have to do that in order to, or wouldn't have to go through that formal process. And so I guess I'm just seeking more context on if there's been any changes to that, or I guess there's any developments we should know about from your perspective.
Well, I guess the main issue we were running into is, so Lieutenant Camarena and I sat down and started pulling the data that was kind of informally requested to me, which I can do for the most part. The problem is the way that I have access to, I'm not an administrator, and so basically I use our report writing system to search for a certain kind of report, a citation, an arrest, whatever I search, and it pulls up a certain set of data. Well, he, as an administrator, does the same search, and he's able to see one or two additional cases. We then contact our records, and they do a search, and it pulls up a different set of data because now they're using a record search versus a report writing search. And so the problem we were having is we were sitting there in the office doing the same search and coming up with different numbers. And so if I were to provide you informally just kind of friendly data, but then you did a public records request, the numbers would be off. We found that mine were 95% accurate, plus or minus, but we just didn't want it to look like we're trying to hide data or trying to change the numbers or whatever it may get twisted and turned into. And so for accuracy's sake, we just decided that the formal request is going to be better in the long run, because then you're not going to have 2-3 sets of data that might not match. So that's kind of where we went.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, Deputy Schroeder. And with that, I think for our board, we should move forward with a motion that sets in place the parameters that we'd like to see, building upon what Jonathan has mentioned. We've already given direction on. The things we've already given direction on are the type of citations and arrests going back to the year, I believe it was 2018. And in addition to that, the type of code section that was cited, as well as I think another thing that would be good for us to track would be if we have any demographic information on who it is that's getting arrested. Are these students? Are they non-students? Are they, as far as race goes, are they black? Are they brown? Are they white? And then in addition to that, looking at how many of these citations are able to go through or able to be diverted through things like the restorative justice program. So I know that that's probably drawing data from a couple different sources, but I figured that I'd open it to the board if there's anything else that you all think should be included in this request.
A note that I think also 2013 was included in Jonathan's list.
Yes.
The comparison.
That's right, the comparison year as well. So yeah, to reflect 2013 as well. So with that, if I don't know if anyone is interested in making a motion, I'm happy to do it. That we would direct staff to prepare a public records request of the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office, asking for records of the arrests and citations going back to 2018, additionally with the year 2013, the penal code section that is cited, demographic information about the persons, the people who are arrested and cited, and information on potential ways that the offenders were diverted. That's a lot.
So if you were in fact making that motion, I will second it.
I'm currently writing it. I'll give you a. I think I got it all.
Thanks, Jonathan. I know it's kind of rambling, but okay. So that motion is made by me, Brant, and seconded by Freeman. Is there any public comment on this motion, this item? I don't think I'm seeing anyone or hearing anyone. Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to our board for any other discussion.
Did this capture motion capture? Needed to capture.
Additional thing would be information on diversion through the restorative justice program and other diversion programs that the justice system has.
Someone who I guess is too shy to be asking in public comment is asking me about crime stats, things like how much theft occurs during these years that's related to, for example, unlocked buildings or things like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And is that data that's already available, or is that something, I guess maybe this would be a question, I don't know, if it's for Jonathan or for law enforcement?
That information is collected for the FBI by the county. And so it's a matter of public record. The FBI reports on all types of crime, both violent and nonviolent. Am I right there, Justin?
Yes, you are correct, George. So it is out there. We just, I don't know exactly where to find it, but I can take a look for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we can find that then if it's available.
And one point of clarification, I know that additionally, as far as citations for offenses such as noise ordinance violations or open container or other minor offenses, some of those may not be violations of the penal code. Just to point that out, because I see we specify penal code in the motion. So if you want to change that to just the type of offense.
Okay, so instead of with penal code numbers, with type of offense?
Sure.
I would say would it be friendly to just say with code numbers, just to make sure that we have that granular clarity as well?
Sure.
You want to just put type of offense and penal code numbers when applicable?
I just want code number to be reflected in there so we get it granularly. Okay, excellent. Any other board discussion on this motion? All right, then with that, we'll call the question and go to a roll call vote.
We have Director Brandt.
Yes.
Director Freeman.
Yes.
Dr. Bertrand,
Yes.
Dr. Hedges,
Yes.
Dr. Thurlow,
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen. Director Nguyen. I will message her separately. Leave it open then, Spencer, like we did last.
We can leave the roll open, and she can give a yes once she's able to solve her technical issue. All right. So motion passes. So in addition to that, I think everything else that we have is on the schedule for this hearing is on the agenda, but I don't know if there's anything else that anyone wanted to discuss in regards to the sort of schedule of hearings that we have put together. Not seeing anyone, so okay, that's great. We will continue on to our next item on our agenda. That is item 4.2, which is board support for the California Legislative Black Caucus Police Reform Package. Okay, so the California Legislative Black Caucus Police Reform Package is something that was sort of an addendum to their overall legislative package, and there's a number of very progressive reforms to the justice system that I think it is very relevant for us to be talking about today. I think our original goal was to have a hearing with our state legislators to try and voice our support and hear more about these reforms. But as a first step, what we're going to do is consider endorsing them and sending a letter of support for these. And I want to just go through some of them to talk about, because I think they're particularly relevant to us. One of them deals with police officer decertification. So this is for ensuring that those in law enforcement that have been let go or because of a misconduct issue are not able to be rehired by other agencies. There have been definitely reports in the press of agencies that are known as quote unquote second chance agencies for some of these officers. And I think this law would definitely put an end to that practice and really declare it, for what it is, very inappropriate, and ensure that those who are in law enforcement, are upholding the highest standard of ethics and all of that. So that is SB 731. AB 1185 would provide for a sheriff's oversight board. And some counties have sheriff's oversight boards as they exist. One of those counties is the County of Los Angeles. However, there have been a number of issues in terms of ensuring that sheriffs are engaged in the process and following the direction of the oversight boards. And so this is legislation to try and clarify some things in the law to make them more effective. So I think it's a really important step. And while we're not considering this today, I would also add that I think that in the event that this law passes, it'll be a really important step for our board to make it a priority to ensure our Board of Supervisors moves forward with one of these these oversight bodies. I think if there's anything that's come out of the Black Lives Matter movement over the last couple of weeks and months is that residents want more participation and more to be able to give more input to how law enforcement and policing is done in their communities. So I think that's really important. There are other pieces of legislation dealing with the carded cardioid restraint. I can never say the word correctly, but this practice is something that was identified by a number of reform advocacy groups as a high priority in order to, that needs to be changed. This is the restraint that took the life of George Floyd. And so I think it's an especially relevant piece of legislation. There are some other pieces of legislation on there as well. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in and provide some input, but those really are the ones that I definitely feel is very compelling, and I think the package on whole is very compelling as well.
Sure, President Brandt, I'll take it from there. There is Assembly Bill 1506, which would call for the Department of Justice for the state of California to create a division that could allow law enforcement agencies at the local level to opt in to have the Department of Justice investigate officer-involved shootings. Additionally, there is Assembly Bill 1022, which is the duty to intervene and report. And what that does is it requires law enforcement officers, whenever they are able, to intervene and report incidents of unnecessary force or other misconduct. Another bill that I want to bring attention to is Assembly Bill 2054, which is the Community Response Initiative to Strengthen Emergency Systems, which stands for crisis. And what this does is it creates a pilot program within Cal OES to provide grants to community-based organizations to provide specific emergency response services as an alternative to police response that serves vulnerable populations. So I think that Isla Vista could have a lot of opportunities specific for this legislation. So I would recommend that we endorse that as well. But in all of these, I'm really proud that we're looking at it because this is the product of our Black legislators in California. I think that they are leading the way in the national conversation on a lot of these issues. And living in a community where we have historically had a lot of issues of trust between our community and police, and a lot of those issues are kind of at a critical moment right now as far as concerns of community members and concerns of law enforcement. These types of statewide reform help us make change at the local level. So I definitely am in favor of supporting these. I want to thank staff for bringing this back to us so quickly.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. I echo those comments and would open it up to the board for further discussion. All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to adopt a position of support for the 2020 bill package and addendum to the 2020 bill package of the California Legislative Black Caucus.
All right, there's a motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Freeman. With that, we'll open it up for public comment. Is there any comment on this motion? All right, I'll close the public comment period and we'll bring it back to the board, and we will call the question. Jonathan, can you do a roll call vote?
Do we have any board comment? Is there board comment?
Yeah, sure. I'll reopen the board comment for a second time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first one. I assume that we were just voting on the sheriff's AB 1185. That's what we have in front of us. Were we provided with the entire package of bills that we're now voting on? Jonathan, did I miss something?
Yes, I sent an email earlier today apologizing that I had prepared a folder with a fact sheet on every bill and ended up attaching to the agenda 1185. But we were agendized to talk about the whole package, and I had updated it a few hours ago earlier today.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I saw your email, but I was assuming that it was AB 1185. So, can we have a little more detail on in the motion? Because just calling it the reform package, I mean, essentially what we're doing is we're endorsing several pieces of legislation, correct? I think we should spell that out just for clarity and for historical purposes, you know, as opposed to just endorsing a quote unquote package.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And in the documents that Jonathan provided us with, so there are, I believe, 17 bills, if I've counted correctly. So we spoke to about 7 of them before. But the first one here is ACA 5, which is the California Act for Economic Prosperity, which would allow for affirmative action measures, especially in educational settings, which is very applicable to our community, as well as in public employment and public contracting. There's ACA 6, which is free the vote, to allow people who are serving parole sentences to vote. There is AB 3121, a reparations task force to study and provide the state on guidance on how to address disparities born out of the legacy of slavery. There is Senate Bill 144, Families Over Fees Act, which would end the assessment and collection of administrative fees imposed against people in the criminal justice system. There is Assembly Bill 1460, which requires the California State University system to have an ethnic studies graduation requirement. There is Assembly Bill 1835, local control funding formula, which is specific for local education agencies identifying unspent supplemental and concentration funds. There is Assembly Bill 1950, which amends the penal code to limit probation to a maximum of 1 year for misdemeanor offenses and 2 years for felony offenses. That one's especially significant in our community. There's Assembly Bill 1994, Medi-Cal eligibility, which ensures that youth in the justice system have uninterrupted access to health care upon being released from a juvenile detention facility. There's only 2 more that we haven't gone over. Assembly Bill 2019, college and career access pathways, and that allows for dual enrollment for kids in the juvenile court schools and alternative schools by allowing county offices of education to participate in dual enrollment for college. And then there is Assembly Bill 2405, which moves beyond the sole creation of shelter and establishes a right to housing for families and kids in California. So that's the total legislative package for the California Legislative Black Caucus.
I can weigh in.
Yeah, let me just, no, go ahead, Father John.
Well, as you know, as I hear those bullet points, I respond with emotional favor toward the content of most of them. This remains at this point in time for me a package that hasn't been opened up yet. Getting notification of it as a package today only. I've heard some of the bills. I have looked into some of the bills in the past, but as a package, I could not, in fiduciary good conscience, vote in favor of them without taking a look at them. There are potential implications here that go beyond, and I'm not putting those implications on the table because I don't know what they are either. good, bad, or indifferent. This may be inadequate to address what it's trying to, and it may be over adequate. At this point, I just don't know. And so I could only be prepared at this point to abstain on a question on this myself.
So if I can add, all right, go ahead, Jay. I was going to follow up on.
I think you're gonna like what I'm gonna say, John, or sorry, George. So I mean, for what it's worth, I also did not understand which bills we were working with. I was under the impression that we were working with, I guess now understanding what sheet of paper Ethan must have been reading from, the ones that Jonathan had provided really detailed information on. So I had gone through all of the individual items on AB 1196, 1506, 2342, 1022, SB 731, and the AB 1185 that George had. But you just listed off now a number of things that actually have nothing to do with policing, things that I haven't really thought about at all. And so now with an understanding that I'm pulling my second, and I can't vote on this either because I don't know anything about most of the things that apparently we're voting on. So.
Sure. Well, I would like to amend my motion. While I know some of us were able to do the research on the position and legislation of the Legislative Black Caucus, I'm fine with us taking a first step on this and providing clarity to those who need it, so that we can have a better discussion next time. So what I will move is for our district to take a position of support on Senate Bill 731, Assembly Bill 1185, Assembly Bill 1196, Assembly Bill 1506, Assembly Bill 2342, and Assembly Bill 1022, the police reform bills of the 2020 California Legislative Black Caucus legislative package.
Okay, can I now speak?
In a moment. I'm going to just remind everyone what those numbers mean. So that was my motion. But those numbers, so that was the police officer decertification bill that Spencer described. That's 1185, the sheriff's oversight bill that Spencer described. 1196, the carotid restraint legislation that Spencer described. And then 1506 is independent investigations for deadly force. 2342 is parole reintegration credits, which allows formerly incarcerated individuals to reduce their parole by attending colleges and universities, especially relevant for our community. And lastly, 1022, which is the duty to intervene and report.
And I'll jump in first and just say, yeah, definitely want to make sure everyone has all the relevant information. I know I was able to find all this attached to our agenda yesterday through the first document on 4.1. So definitely just want to throw that out there, as far as the linking of things go. But go ahead, Director Thurlow.
So this is a process question. Obviously, I'm supportive of the thoughts behind this and the need for this, and I would be supportive of passing a motion on the police review board. But again, these are complicated laws that we should study very carefully. I mean, I really feel that it's, while you and Ethan may have studied these really carefully, the rest of us got it this morning. And these are like 10 bills, and some of them have, repercussions. 2 years probation for a felony. I don't know what that means. Seriously. I'm not sure I support only 2 years for certain felonies in California. It's not, I apologize that I didn't read these today, but this isn't the way for good governance to work, where you present your board with 15 legislative bills, all of them complicated, and say, okay, endorse all of them. And so my name goes up, and forever I'm endorsing them, and I don't even know anything about it. So I would say this, I would be supportive of the police review board because we got that with the original packet, which is how we should govern here, which is we should not be getting huge, complicated documents the day of the board meeting, and then move forward. And the other piece of it is we should really take these endorsements one bill at a time, okay? Because I may support all but one of them because I don't know what parole after 2 years means, but I can certainly tell you that there's certain crimes in California where we want to have probation for more than 2 years. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. So I would be happy to vote in favor. Otherwise, I'm gonna, like Father John, abstain because I don't know.
Sure. Well, thank you, George. I appreciate that. And one thing I think that all of us are learning and appreciating during this critical moment in our community is the importance of us working together to find common ground on these tough issues and working to talk through the issues and better educate ourselves and each other about how we can really promote racial justice in our community and make our community a safer place for all. So with that, I am comfortable with us moving to support Assembly Bill 1185, which is the Sheriff's Oversight Commission legislation. So I will move for our board to take a position of support on Assembly Bill 1185.
And I'll second that.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll bring these back next time for deeper discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, and then as a matter of procedure, and we really should have a roll call vote on each one. Is that fair, Ethan?
Yes, I think the motion on the table is just one bill right now.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there.
And we actually have to roll call everything because we're on video call. So
Yeah.
I just want to link this correctly. My mistake won't happen again.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm going to open up, or do we have further board discussion before we open up public comment? No? Okay.
I have one thing. As far as an oversight board, I am generally supportive of that as an idea, but I am still wanting more details. And forgive me, but even on that one, I would have to abstain at this point. And that's not a rejection of the concept, and but it's also not an endorsement of the specific details that are presently on the table.
Just to clarify one thing, Jonathan, the document that you did attach, was that 1185 or is that a different one?
Yeah, what I attached on
I don't know if you can hear us, Jonathan, but we can't hear you. At least I can't hear you anymore.
Cut out.
Saturday was the floor analysis.
Sorry, Jonathan, I think you're cutting out again.
Oh, sorry. I did just get the unstable message. What I said was what was linked on Saturday is the floor analysis for 1185. And so that is the information that the members use to vote on these bills.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay, we'll open it up to public comment now. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on the motion at hand? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. And I apologize, my video is a little delayed. I think I saw a hand from you, Director Freeman.
Yeah, then I realized I should just say this after, like, let's vote on the motion and then I'll say what I'm,
Okay. So we'll call the question. This is to support Assembly Bill 1185.
I will call the Director Brandt.
Yes.
Director Freeman.
Yes.
Director Bertrand.
Black Lives Matter, aye.
Director Hedges.
Black Lives Matter, I abstain.
Director Thurlow.
Yes.
Director Nguyen.
I'm not actually seeing Director Nguyen on the call. Is she still having technical issues?
She's in the car, so she was trying to call in, and then I lost my communication with her as we were dealing with this. So I will try to see where she's at again.
Okay, we'll leave the roll open if she is able to make it back on for her to vote. But motion does pass 4 yeses, 1 or 2 absences, and 1 abstention. Okay, and let me just make it back to my agenda. We'll, or Director Freeman, is there a comment you were going to make?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, well, with the fact that Christie's not apparently on the call quite anyway, if Christie had been prepared to vote on the original, the more expanded set of bills, specifically the second set that Ethan had brought up, then we could have done that because we could have actually. But if she's not there, or like if she was excited to essentially do it. But then the next thing is that, so if this is going to come back, I think it's worth noting that we were at some point wanting to have discussions, which we had actually many discussions of it, but we never actually made any actual recommendations relating to it in policy committee about like the very expanded set of bills. And one of the things I found confusing is a lot of them don't really, they're things that I like agree with in the high level, but they're also things that are incredibly complicated issues that are kind of outside the scope of the powers of our district. I mean, even like thinking about like ethnic studies requirements in universities, like at least we're next to a university, but it's not really anything directly related to stuff that we're doing. And it's like, oh, the amendments for all of these things were related to our policing power that we were looking at and the things we were trying to do there. And like maybe the probation one that was also being poked at though, but I'm just wondering about whether it really makes sense to pull in all of these things and to take support positions on all of this stuff as our government. But.
Yeah, that's a great question. Jonathan just put the policy in the chat, but would there be anything else that you would?
Oh, we did make the policy. We did make a policy about it. Okay. I couldn't remember if we had actually voted on a policy for it.
Yeah. And I guess all that I would say is I think the board direction that we gave a number of meetings ago was specifically to bring back the congressional or the legislative Black caucus's proposals for our consideration. So.
Oh, and so since Spencer doesn't have video, remember, so Ethan and George have their hands up.
Oh, okay. I'll go to Ethan and then George.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely am sensitive to us only taking action on things that directly impact the quality of life of our residents in Isla Vista and in accordance with board policy. And I think this is one of those items. I believe that this proposal that's been brought forth by our Black legislators in California is focused on addressing systemic racism, which is the root of a lot of these public safety issues that we have. And it's the number one thing that our constituents want to talk to us about right now. But I definitely want to make sure we're doing it in accordance with board policy. But I do take seriously that this is very relevant to our community as far as working to reduce and move past systemic racism.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Director Thurlow?
This is kind of a classic case where if we had functioning committees, this would be a great one to send a committee, have a committee kind of chew on it, and then help us analyze it, pros and cons. I mean, I kind of agree with Jay. I mean, I understand where we're going here, Ethan, but I'm not sure what the nexus is between CSU's curriculum and public safety in Isla Vista. And man, when you start to get into CSU's curriculum, I mean, the headline feels good, but what's beneath the headline in terms of, you know, what actually we're endorsing? And when we, as the board, endorse, hey, we want to get involved in the curriculum of CSU, it seems like a stretch, even though obviously it does make us feel like we're making a difference. So I would only say it would be nice to have a committee, exec committee, or somebody else that would chew on these and then bring them back to us after analyzing them.
Absolutely, and I'll be clear, my intention is not for us to get involved with how California state universities are run, but to endorse the roadmap for advancing racial justice that's been provided by our Black legislators. And if coming back with more information is helpful for all the board, I think we can do that, and I'll definitely lend my time to our staff in helping prepare that for this next meeting. But I mean, we're getting the calls, we're getting the emails, we're getting the texts. Our constituents want us to be aggressive on promoting and advancing racial justice and reforming the ways that we keep our community safe. That's what we'll continue to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I see that Christy is back on the line, so I want to just reopen the roll and allow her an opportunity to vote on the motion that we had in front of us. Jonathan, could you read that back?
Yes, we'll do. The two motions that we had still open are, the first is motion to direct staff to prepare Public Records Act request of the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office, including all arrest citations in Isla Vista in 2018 to 2020 and 2013, with type of offense, code numbers, demographic information, and diversion program data. And the other motion is a motion to adopt a position of support for AB 1185.
I'm sorry about that. I'm driving home right now and I have AirPods in and I'm in a weird, sketchy area where the signal's really bad. But I will say yes to that motion, the first motion.
Thank you, Director Noon. We will record a yes for that.
But not the second one?
Sorry, yeah, and motion 1 and motion 2.
Great, thanks for that clarification. All right. So with that, I think we can close discussion on this item, and we will continue in line with the direction to have staff bring back the rest of the Legislative Black Caucus package in line with our policies. So I'm going to move now to item 4.3, which is the Public Safety Community Input System. And Jonathan has prepared us a staff report on this. So I would actually just hand it over to him to talk about sort of some of the things that we'll recap some of the things we've done already as a district, but then what else we can do more of.
Thank you. So this was one of the topics brought up at the last meeting as a future discussion item, and it's definitely not on for action today. It's more to get the board's place of where something like this could go, and then we could bring back, more formal proposal of what we can do moving forward. But this document that I put together was just to show, what we have done with public safety input from the community. And we have actually generated a lot of input in the past. We had the town hall in 2017 that led to the creation of the Safety Stations program. And we've had surveys of different kinds for different issues, from Deltopia to our budget, that included information about law enforcement and public safety issues in Isla Vista and the programs we provide in that area. And, like as you saw in our budget back in June, one of the attachments was data compiled for the board of the review. So we have this experience of getting this stuff done. We just don't have a regular system to do it, especially for public safety specifically. So I put some ideas of what we can do based on what we've already done, which is having an annual event that's a public safety town hall. Basically, take what we did that year and do it again every year, or do something like a quarterly community survey where we design questions of we pool the ones we've always asked and add additional ones, and we'd have our interns do the same kind of text analysis, do a report to the board, share the information with law enforcement and interested community groups and advocates, and just put that information out there for the discussion and solutions to be drawn from. We do that on a regular basis. So those are just two ideas based on what we've already done, but would like to hear what the board is thinking on a public safety community input system, and we can put something together and we can this is one of the ones where we can get it going and get something done pretty quickly once we know what we want to do.
Great. Thank you for that overview, Jonathan. I'll just say at the outset, I think the way I look at this is really us systematizing something that we've had a lot of success doing in the past, which is just really being an effective way of gathering this input from people in our community. And I think that some of the questions we've asked in previous outreach projects, such as the budget priority survey, are a good start. And it would be nice to see basically how I think some of that data changes over time. That's a big thing that we talk about when it comes to figuring out how effective our programs are being overall, is how are the satisfaction rate and the metrics changing over time. So I think that will be really helpful for us to have as policymakers. And I think that this is a really good start for what we can do in order to have that input provided. I'll go to Director Bertrand.
Thank you. I think this is a great report to show what we already have going on. I think that the recommendations or suggestions that you have in 2B, items 1 through 4, as far as asking questions about the public safety and law enforcement contracts that we have as a community services district, allowing for open-ended sharing of community sentiment on interactions with law enforcement and public safety, asking questions based on about ongoing safety issues, and then sharing that result with relevant stakeholders and community members and making it transparent and public, I think is a great direction for us to go. One thing that we've often spoken about is that if we don't know what's happening, we can't do anything to fix it. So this is about us better identifying the issues that exist in our community. This is about empowering Isla Vista residents to use their voice to express their concerns or their advocacy for ways that we can improve things that are going well, services that need to remain. This really is to give Isla Vista residents a voice in what public safety looks like in their community and how we as community services district directors can better advance safety in a holistic way. So I think that, Jonathan, you have the main parts of this. One thing I would like to see as part of a program like this is a lot of digital advertising so that folks can easily access this online and that they can provide feedback at any time. I think quarterly is a good pace to review this and bring it to the board, but that folks can participate at any time. So thanks for coming forward with this.
Thank you. And that, I think that is the intention, that it's open, but we'll review quarterly and make big pushes at certain times.
Any other comments from members of the board?
So the town hall event that I remember as being one of the most successful sort of like style of this event, and actually relatively related, at least not necessarily similar, but a related topic area, was actually one that was run before the district got constructed by, I believe, Ethan and Spencer. It was the Isla Vista Noise Ordinance Town Hall from August of 2016. In fact, it was actually, it was still 5/5. It was August 16th. It was 5 days off. It wasn't exactly. But actually, it probably took me a little while to get the video. So it was nearly exactly 4 years ago. And that event managed to get Embarcadero Hall. It had representatives. Like I like the format somehow. It felt to me like it provided the public a really powerful opportunity to speak towards the people that were making the decisions in a way that kind of required them to accept that feedback somehow, like even if they didn't do anything about it. There was something about the format that I think made people feel really comfortable going there, but not and saying, I don't like this for these reasons, but feeling like it's not just them talking to each other about it, but that, like, you know, we actually had the lieutenant of the patrol there. We actually had, I don't know if it's possible you can replicate that sort of things. It requires buy-in from all these parties to be willing to sit there on stage and, you know, get berated for 2 hours by people in the public. But and also, of course, that was such a touchstone sort of topic for Isla Vista, that trying to be like, okay, well, for anything else that we ever do, trying to get that many people to be willing to come there and do that for 2 hours is, of course, interesting. But I just want, I loved that meeting, and I don't know if there's anything that we can replicate on. Ethan and Spencer did that meeting, so maybe they know what to do now.
Well, yeah, I think fondly back to that, and it was you nailed it with saying that it was a place where folks felt comfortable to come and share their feedback. And I think that everyone walked away from that meeting just seeing how invested Isla Vista residents are in their community. So whatever we can do, I agree that that was a model for a successful public engagement to make our community safer.
I just posted, weirdly, it showed up as the YouTube Live channel, the YouTube Live account on the, but I posted a link to the video of that meeting from August of 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely echo your sentiment. I think it was definitely one of the most effective ways that I've seen the community organize for or against any legislative or otherwise proposal in the time that I've been in Isla Vista. And really, I think in a lot of ways it's due to the inflammatory nature of what was being brought forward at the time by the sheriff's office. And thankfully, we haven't seen a proposal like that brought forward since then. But I would just say that it's up to us as community leaders, I think, to do what we can, because whenever there's something bad that's on the table, people are always going to, in a very reactionary way, react to it and voice their displeasure. But it's a little bit harder to organize people in support of something that's important and to have some of these tough conversations, especially when I think a lot of folks are very cynical about any sort of reform to some of these systems. So I think that by doing this in a regular and methodical way, as Ethan's mentioned, with tons of outreach, not just with advertising, but other forms as well, I think we'll hopefully be able to get the community, organized to make their voice heard, which is really what I think we all share that goal. Any other board comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I will open up the public comment. Any comments from members of the public? Okay, not hearing any. So, Jonathan, you mentioned you wanted to bring back a final draft. Is that right?
Yeah, just wanted to see what people were thinking today, and we can just clean this up and get it finalized now for next time.
Okay. Then in that case, we entertain a motion to direct staff to bring back a final draft of the public safety community input system.
Is that your motion? I'll second.
I'll make the motion, seconded by Bertrand. Any other public comment? Any further board discussion? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Hedges,
Yes.
Director Thurlow,
Yes.
Director Nguyen.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Next, we'll go to item 4.4, which is the UCPD contract negotiations update. I'll hand it over to Jonathan to give a report on that.
Spencer, before you do that, can you put me in timeout?
That's my job. I'll do
All
that.
right. Will you put me in timeout?
Yeah, I'll move you to the waiting room, and we'll text you when you're done.
Just to be clear, you mean recusal, Director Thurlow?
Yes, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion. Let me know when you get back in. Thank you.
Yes, and I do want to mention that Lieutenant Camarena messaged me that he couldn't get his audio to work, but he supports our efforts to have public safety teams. All right.
Sorry, Jonathan,
Anyways.
you cut out at the end of that?
Too. Okay. Audio's not good today. Lieutenant Camarena just messaged me to let you all know that he supports public safety town halls.
Great. Thank you, Lieutenant Camarena.
So, to 4.4. So this is probably a more complex item that we have on our agenda compared to other items we've had in the past or today. But there's a couple. I put together a few things in this folder for review. The first one is, the first few are the original MOUs we've had with UCSB and UCPD for the safety stations and the investigator. And we had provided those a few meetings ago already, but I put these back in as attachments, original contracts. You have also the amendment to the to the investigator contract that we discussed in June and the board approved that included two things. One was new goal language that the board had directed us to work on since April. And then it also extended that contract by 60 days as well, so that we can negotiate other issues to implement Resolution 20-9. So we had our conversations with UCPD and the Vice Chancellor for Administrative Services, which oversees UCPD. And then out of that, I put together another document that's in this folder, which is the board outcomes for UCPD contracts. And this is kind of like, this is where some of the updates are of where the contracts are at. And I'll come back to talking directly about the contracts. One more thing I want to highlight is the staff report that Ross also put together that I think is very good and comprehensive on this specific topic of law enforcement contracts and implementing Resolution 20-9, which is the main policy point we're going off of for this item. And I will turn it over to him in a bit if he wants to elaborate more on this. But I just wanted to let you know these are the major points of this item: is the two staff reports and all the agreements we've already had and looked at in the past. So I'll give now a little bit of my update and Spencer can also chime in of the conversation we had in terms of what moving forward we can do with the contracts on this like short-term practical level, figuring this out. And then Ross's report covers both the short-term and the bigger implications, and has some different options too for us to consider. So does that sound good? Any questions at this point on like what we're dealing with, different items? Cool. So the first thing is to note with the safety stations is that contract ended, and I'll make a note. I have a typo, so I'll make a note that it's actually the safety stations in number 3 in my memo. So that contract ended. We were going to wait to develop the goals for that one. This is before Resolution 20-9 had passed, but we were going to wait to do the goals for that one after we'd figured out the investigator, just because of, the safety stations always gets redone in August anyways. So there hasn't been any progress on this contract, the safety station one. So I'll just name that, besides the fact that generally the defining racial equity issue will end up being something that intersects with this. But once we figure that out, I guess we'll be well on our way to figure out the other one. The main contract that we're grappling with is the investigator contract, which technically ended in June, and we passed an amendment to extend. Where UCSB is at with that is they said that they'd like to do an extension to be able to figure out, the issues we have. At this point, the extension is 2 weeks from now. It ends. It's already been the first 6 weeks, but they were not comfortable signing the amendment that had the extension through the end of August if it also included the annual goals, because they felt that in that way it kind of made it seem like all those goals had to be accomplished within the amendment extension period, so by the end of August. So they said that they're more than willing to consider them and negotiate those goals as part of the 1-year contract, but not the 2-year contract. However, what Ross and I put forward as the board direction back in June was that we did want to have the goals as part of the 2-month contract amendment. So just looking to the board for clarity on that, which is, just on the small issue of the amendment, like do we want to continue this gap right now, July 1 through August, without these goals or anything, just, regular extension? That's the first question, I think. Then the other questions are, what do we want to do for the 1-year term? And then moving forward is, how do we define racial equity, which was a request made to us, could we provide a definition to use as we're developing these negotiations and the contracts? And then Ross's, I think, memo, I'll turn it over to him in a second, I think towards the end does make it a good point, which is, I think we need to know better what the end goals are so that we can make better negotiations now that make incremental steps towards those end goals or bigger steps. But I think otherwise we're kind of making surface level changes. So that is and I think part of that, if we define what we meant by racial equity more specifically, that could give us better ability to negotiate these things. And so now I want to turn it over to Ross to talk about some of the contents in his report and then take questions.
Thanks, Jonathan. I don't want to belabor the memo that I put together since I know all the board members and members of the public can probably read, but I do want to highlight some of the points that Jonathan brought up during his oral report. And it really breaks down into 2 general areas of what you can colloquially refer to as nibbling around the edges versus, getting to the core of the issues. And what will be very helpful for me in working with staff to coordinate and negotiate any contract having to do with public safety is to have very clear direction from the board on what its goals are. how it is that we're supposed to go about implementing those policy goals in the practical realm of these various contracts, whether they be for safety stations, whether they be for the interpersonal violence investigator, or any future contracts. What has been made very clear is that this is an ongoing concern for the board to make sure that its dealings with law enforcement reflect a policy of anti-racism and addressing inequality at as close to the systemic level as the district can possibly get via its contracting ability. But as Jonathan alluded to, we want to make sure that we understand what it means when the board says anti-racism policies, because this is a relatively, I will say it's new in the context of a broader conversation, kind of writ large, but we don't make policy, we implement policy, so we need to have clarity from the board on what that means. So even moving forward with what we have in terms of amendments, we are running into some of the issues that were kind of anticipated of. We're getting questions back, well, what does that mean in this context? When you say commitment to anti-racism, what does that mean? And either we need to provide in the contract itself specific deliverables that the contracting party, UCPD, the Sheriff's Department, or both, are being asked to meet so that there is no vagueness or ambiguity in the terms of the contract. That just gets back to basic principles of contract law to make sure both sides know what it is that they're contracting for. But the broader, more critical issue is to make sure that we are appropriately and to the degree desired by the board effectuating these policy decisions and policy choices. So, I think I would only add to my memo to say that option one and option two are not mutually exclusive of one another. I think I allude to this at the end of option two, right before additional factors. That even if the board focuses on option two, there will need to be something, some direction and some discussion about what to do in the meantime, because the safety station agreement is over, and the interpersonal violence investigator contract, I believe, is ending soon or may have just recently ended. I'm not sure. I remember exactly. But if the board still wants to continue with either or both of those programs and wants us at the staff level to move forward with these principles of equality and anti-racism in mind, we're going to need more direction in the short term to be able to implement that. We think we've done a good job at that. And I thank Jonathan for including our past efforts in the agenda packet. But moving forward, we want to make sure that we have those principles down, distilled down into practical language that we can include in our contracting negotiations on a moving forward basis, which is going to require a very clear discussion and direction from the board. I don't want to belabor the memo any more than that, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Jonathan for the remainder of the item.
Thank you, Ross. That was very comprehensive. And one last thing I wanted to mention that it is in my memo, but I just wanted to name it, which is, the goals that Ross mentioned, we already developed. We worked with UCPD to do those. We took board direction. I did make small modifications to those in the little period between when that got done and before resolution, or right after resolution 20-9 passed. Some racial equity, anti-racism goals, but I'm not sure if that's what the board, they weren't written originally in mind with implementing 20-9. They were just written in general to do. So that is another point I said, is we could review those and say that's sufficient for this year, for this 1 year term, or not, or we can modify these. But I think that's where we can make our changes, is in not just limited to those, but as these amendments to goals. For the contract, I think that would be one area where we could put the focused negotiations, but there would be others as well. So back to the board for questions on what we just presented.
Jonathan, maybe it would be good to start off with just going through those goals for the board to better frame the discussion.
Okay, will do. So the goals that we developed these again with the board's direction in April. I met with Dave Millard and Kavina Avila to discuss what the board's discussion was, and then put these to paper. And so they are in 3 different kind of areas. The first is the case reporting requirements. So it's that UCPD will give us monthly reports, and then a biannual oral report, just like was done in the 2019-2020 year. The two times came to the board, and having the written reports every month. So that's going to be memorialized in the contract. It wasn't before. We were just kind of doing this. That's in there. The next one is the UCPD outreach commitments. I'll just read these really quick because they're short. It's developing an information sharing pipeline from the investigator to STESA care and domestic violence solutions. Develop and implement training of CSOs on bystander intervention, with priority given to those CSOs staffing the safety stations. Utilize community outreach team to assist in spreading awareness of the interpersonal investigator service. Implement a video social media campaign to raise awareness of the service. And collaborate with the district to design and deliver a mail piece, including information about the investigator service and other related services. And then the other one would be the commitments of the investigator themselves and what they're going to do, which is establish relationships with at least 15 new student groups, especially those focusing on racial justice, anti-racism, and sexual assault prevention. Attend at least 2 community events per quarter to network and build service awareness. Communicate the established menu of reporting options for survivors and the benefits the investigator brings to the process. And seek out additional platforms to present educational talks regarding interpersonal violence. Those are the goals.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. And then, so what we have basically is that we have, when our board took action in June, we asked for anti-racism and equity components to be added to those goals, but we didn't thoroughly spell out what that meant to have deliverables along this line. So I think maybe what would be good to start off with would be for, I don't know if the board or staff has suggestions or ideas for ways or different elements of that could be included. I have a couple more in the context of CSOs, but I guess I do want to say though, would that be a helpful way you think to proceed?
Yeah, I think what's helpful is, I guess we have a few different decisions or points we need direction on. The first is just the most immediate, which is what to do about the 2-month July and August gap with the contract amendment. Like, we insist we include the goals, or are we okay without them? Just to extend that contract. So that's one. That's a very quick decision that needs to be made. Then the other one is defining racial equity in general. So it doesn't even need to be directly specific to a goal for a contract, but what we mean generally. And that's something that the Vice Chancellor at UCSB said that the council would like to see as we negotiate with them. And then another thing would be what are the 1-year long-term negotiation points we want to make with both the two contracts. And I think they kind of derive from our definition of racial equity. And Ross just texted me a discussion of the limited nature. We have a limited nature of our police power, so we have to set expectations of what we can do right here, and that's why his memo then breaks it out of what we can do now and what we can research separately.
Sure, yeah, and I think we can have that conversation separately and after this. So I guess I'll sort of just start out. I think it's fine to extend the contract for the time being in order to make sure that we get all of these things fleshed out in the year-long contract. It was my understanding that I guess, I know that that's not how it was memorialized in our motions, but that's definitely, I think, the intent that I had behind it. And so in our conversations with UCPD, I see that, or with the Vice Chancellor, I see that as something that makes a lot of sense for us to move forward with so that we are able to accomplish all the goals that we would like to see in that contract. Is there any other feedback, thoughts on the board on that?
Yes, I agree for having this kind of bridge just to keep this going over the next few months while we finalize the agreement for the next year. But just to confirm, the issues that we were working out a couple of months ago when COVID was first hitting and everything was looking differently, and we discovered there may have been some confusion about if all of the hours were being performed in Isla Vista versus on campus. Have we squared all that away?
Yes, we did square that away, and I don't want to miss, since I don't have the exact dates in front of me right now, but it was confirmed to us that we won't be billed for the period where the investigator wasn't working in Isla Vista.
Yeah. So glad that was taken care of, and that would be my only apprehension with this immediate extension for 2 months. So I think we're good to go with that.
And just to clarify to the board, so technically this extension ends in 3 weeks. So we take direction to, I'm not sure if we can negotiate the 1-year contract in 3 weeks. I think it's a possibility, but I can't guarantee you that August 25th we'll have a meeting with that new contract. So
do you want us to propose extending for longer than 3 weeks?
Yeah, yes, but I also don't want to, endlessly extend this. So I think maybe just until mid-September would just give us, one additional board meeting to bring this back to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a 1 month hard stop would be good, and I think it definitely gives us enough time. And then the only thing that I would add in, and I guess this is a question for Jonathan, I'm assuming we can, when it comes to, we're talking about the full year quote unquote contract, but I know we also have this stuff set up timing wise for our, process that we've got with the budget and review, and can we make sure that I guess that we get the contracts on like a similar calendar going forward?
Yeah, they will be on the right calendar even if we approve them in September. The last contracts all ended June 30th, and because we had it was just a natural force of Resolution 20-9, passing right when the contracts were ending and we were approving our budget. But that shouldn't be a problem. Like once we approve them, we'll set the end dates the right way.
Okay, great to hear.
And we build for these months, so it'll even out if we sign something for July 1 to September 9th or whatever that range ended up being.
Okay, good to know about that. Any other board comment on this portion of things?
I've got something.
Go ahead, Director Freeman.
So what was I just put my eyes to get distracted. Contracts. Oh yeah. So my thought, for what it's worth, like looking forward when we're doing these contracts in the future, is I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to make more strategic changes and asks to be able to do more negotiations with the various parties that we have that we're involved with, because we do have the ability to contract with either UC or the sheriff's department for various things. There was something actually that Deborah had mentioned during one of our workshop meetings about like trying to have more of an umbrella contract that takes some of these subcontracts that we currently have and trying to merge them together, and that provides a better vehicle in some sense to being able to make more like to throw in small things that we're trying to get in it, whether they be kind of concrete policy changes, which kind of what we're trying to do now, see if we can put them in. But sometimes maybe a request for things not to happen, or kind of like slough positions. I'm just bringing this up because I think that a lot of the power of doing these contract negotiations will come up in the year when we go to do the bigger renewal, like what we're trying to do. Like I don't have as much feedback on what to do in these 2-month intervals and with these like trying to do the fast approvals and things, because I a lot of my thoughts had been things that would take a year of setup in order to be able to really come to an appreciation of what we want with negotiations and things like that. And so I mean, I'm essentially explaining why I have so little feedback in some sense on these short things. I'm really glad that people have been coming up with the things that we can ask for. And I really, actually, the amendments that were in the board package, First Amendment to MOU with UCPD re-IVI, some of the items there look really interesting to me. So to the extent to which we can get some of these things is great. So
yeah, and all of those we developed with UCPD pre-Resolution 20-9. The only thing I added after Resolution 20-9 was the established relationships with 15 student groups. I just added the qualifier of what kind after. So these are not old. I don't want to call them old, but we've had these. And I think we haven't negotiated these yet, but UCPD and not UCPD, the vice chancellor said that the UC is open to negotiating these for the 1 year, for the 2020-2021 term. But we haven't finalized that. We don't know, is it going to get all of them? I assume we will, but yeah, those aren't, our board has voted yes on these, but they haven't been accepted yet by UCSB's council. And yeah, they wouldn't accept them for the shorter term.
Okay, good information to know. So then in that case, I guess we're all in agreement of we'll do the 2-month extension and then go for these things in the year-long quote unquote contract.
Yeah. So, okay.
So then, in addition to that, are you looking for direction on the definition of racial equity tonight?
Yeah, I don't think we need it hard tonight. I think it's something we definitely need to think about. But I guess if I'm hearing that where we want to go is do the extension status quo through September 9th, which is the day after our board meeting in September. And then we work on the goals in the amendment. These are the ones we push for the 1 year to meet our policy goals in a very small way for Resolution 20-9, and then take the next year to fully flesh out our racial equity definition to include then in a future contract that we might, we can do whatever we do for that, as we go through the year. But for what we do between now and September 8th, it's the status quo extension and then negotiate these goals to be into the 2020-2021 contract.
Okay. Any feedback from the board on that component? Okay. Then in that case, I'll entertain a motion to that effect to extend the contract for these 2 months, incorporate the goals that we previously adopted for this year, and then incorporate the racial equity goals for the next year.
Well, I'll second that.
Okay, I'm just writing the motion. Okay.
We don't have a motion.
Yeah, I think Spencer just mentioned one. Right?
Okay.
Yes, that was me and then Ethan second. And I'm just clicking over to try and find the agenda again so that I can look at what the motion is. So I've got too many tabs open.
Okay, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be missing one or two pieces of it, but it is a motion to extend the UCPD IVI contract through September 9th, negotiate the prepared goals for the 2020-2021 contract, and work on a definition for racial equity negotiate in the 2021-2022 contract.
Great. I think that is friendly with me. Is any friendly with Ethan?
Yes, thanks.
All right. So with that, I'll open up public comment. Is there any public comment on this motion? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and we'll bring it back to the board. Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Okay, Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Hedges?
Yes.
Director Thurlow is not here. Director Nguyen?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 5-0.
And then I want to ask the board for one more thing, Director Brandt, if that's possible on the CP.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing is the safety stations contract. So that obviously is not, we haven't worked on that one in terms of setting goals for it or negotiating racial equity provisions of 20-9. I mean, partially is because of the pandemic where there is not a need for the service. There's not an immediate need for the service right now. And also that we hadn't had a more focused discussion like we did with the investigator back in June. So I was wondering where you all, we can wait on this one, but just want to see where you all were at with negotiating contract. Is it a big priority to get done as well and develop the goals, which we can do? Or where are you at? Do we want to hold off on this until we see where the pandemic goes and how we want to provide this service still, or at what level with the new reality? So I wanted to see where we can take those negotiations.
Great question. So I would, I guess, start by opening up to the board on that, just in general.
Yeah, so I definitely see that we have some time to figure out what the future of this service is going to look like, because right now it's not a service that can be provided. But when I do look at the year ahead, I think that we should be prepared for there to be a need for this service. And someday we'll hopefully return to what previous service levels looked like. So I do think that we should continue to push forward on creating a contract, or at least making progress on what we would put in a future MOU, so that we are prepared if and when we're able to do that in this next fiscal year.
Okay.
I think that's good feedback, and I would just add that I definitely, as we go about this, we wouldn't want to, I guess, send the message that, we're fine with letting, the contract lapse and everything, and or send a wrong message that we aren't, I guess, committed to the service. So I think I'm in agreement that we'll have lots of discussions over the next year about goals for that program in particular, ways that we could add to it and improve it. Any other board comments? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to that end.
Sure. So I'll make a motion to direct staff to work with UCPD to update an MOU for future Isla Vista Safety Station program provision.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Hedges. Is there any public comment on this motion? All right, seeing none, we'll close. Is there any further board comment on this motion?
I'm very sorry. Could Jonathan read back the motion?
Yes, the motion is to direct staff to work with UCPD to update an MOU for future IV safety station provision.
Okay, any other board feedback? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brandt,
Yes.
Dr. Freeman,
Yes.
Dr. Hedges,
Yes.
Dr. Bertrand,
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen. Dr. Nguyen?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 5-0 with one absence and one abstention. Now, for the last part of this, I guess I will say this is definitely a subject, sort of the quote-unquote option 2 that Ross presents in his memo that I think we would want to have with more public input and with all board members present, just because I think George recuses because of UCP or the university and his employment there, but this is a broader topic. I will just share that my, I guess, the way that I've looked at some of the discussions we've been having so far is within the context of our current powers and within the context of our ability to contract with law enforcement agencies in order to achieve those goals and the potential for that in the future. But definitely would be interested to hear what the public has to say about that, and think that we have done that here so far. So I don't know if there's anything else that other board members would add, or if that, I guess, helps to answer council's questions. Okay, seeing none, I'll take that as a yes, and we can then, I think, proceed on with the rest of the agenda.
Let me let George back in. George, you're in? There he is.
Okay, I'm back. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Thurlow. So we're going to go to item 4.5, support for the County of Santa Barbara Alternative Transportation Grant application.
Great, thank you, Director Brandt, for this. So we've been approached a few times, and we've heard directly from the county on this grant that they're applying for, and they requested that we submit a letter of support for their grant application, just as I'll report later in the agenda that we are requesting letters of support for our grant application. And so they did just send me today the information of what the analysis of all the feedback was for what they're going to apply for. So I'll cover that now. Apologies, if it was prepared before Saturday, I would have included it. But what they told me that they're going to apply for is closing the sidewalk gap from El Colegio all the way down to the beach, which I know is something that our board has brought up a lot. Closing the sidewalk gap on Trigo, closing a sidewalk gap on Del Playa, and then for bicycles, they would complete a class 2 bike lane on Del Mar and Del Norte. It will provide class 3 options on Camino Corto, class 2 bike lane on Picasso and Pardal, class 3 on Abrego, and a class 2 bike lane to connect Picasso to Abrego to divert traffic. So these are what they put together from the survey that we helped them with and the town hall and the outreach that they did. So they're asking, and they're applying for a grant from the state, and they're asking for a letter of support to bring in that grant money to Isla Vista.
Thanks for that, Jonathan, and very great to hear that update on what the county is interested in applying for. I'll just share to refresh the board's memory that myself and Director Friedman met with county staff and their consultants who are helping prepare the ATP grant and provided a number of pieces of input. And one of those that I think we were both somewhat passionate about is something that's been spoken about before here at our meetings and in other public meetings, which is that the need, if there are sidewalks that are being developed, the priority is for these north-south streets where cars drive faster and there are more gaps in coverage, and it can be very difficult for pedestrians to move effectively. So I don't know, Jonathan, if they shared streets. You said from El Colegio to the ocean, so I'm assuming that's all of the gaps. Is that right, or am I being too ambitious?
No, it's for Camino del Sur. From
Camino del Sur.
Yeah, well, I think Camino Pescadero might be almost complete, but they included Camino del Sur as the site where to complete the sidewalk gap. It says it'll create a safe walking path for neighbors east and west of the roadway.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, definitely would love to see the results of that, and I think this is a really important project for us to be supporting. We always talk about how we're such a pedestrian and bicycle-oriented community, but our built infrastructure doesn't always reflect that. I think in certain areas, if you go on to UCSD's campus, the built infrastructure really does reflect that, and things we can do to move our community more in that direction with bike lanes and whether they're class 2, class 3, and these north-south sidewalks, I think is a big step forward. So I'm definitely very prepared to support this, and would also say that we say a big thank you to the public works staff for all the work that they've done to put this together. I'll open it up to other board members if you have anything to share.
I always have stuff to say on this sort of thing. I'm just saying that in audio because weren't seeing the video earlier, but I'm not just jumping in. So should I say something?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So, so it's really great. Some of the items that Jonathan listed, particularly the north-south sidewalk. I was very excited to hear. I did also miss here, as did Spencer. I thought I just heard from El Caleo to the ocean, and I was very excited by the idea that that might be a more elaborate component to this. I was just out walking last night, actually, on Trigo Road. I continue to honestly not see the need to continue to connect these sidewalks on Trigo. Del Playa is just, I mean, unless the goal really is to completely actually, I mean, like Del Playa at least has room for the sidewalks, honestly. It's a sufficiently large street area, and they put in giant sidewalks, but then they were still occluded. And so I don't know if they're just trying to like finish the areas that don't have sidewalks, or if now they're going to go back and redo all the utility poles. So I can't imagine that's what that means, in order to try to make the sidewalks actually useful for disabled people, which they currently aren't. But otherwise, it's that the entire premise continues to be flawed to me, other than the one section that's the north-south sidewalks. And honestly, even from the perspective of, well, don't you want to vote yes in order to try to get more money into the community to accomplish things? I honestly think that a lot of what the county spends money on with relation to these sidewalk issues are actually making the community worse, whether they be from the removal of trees and various other greenery areas, or all the way through to just the continual embedding of the notion that there is an area that is for people walking, and there is otherwise this is a car-oriented community. And so even honestly, the class 3 bike lanes, I mean, some of the ones that were listed, like when it first got mentioned, I was like, oh, that actually sounds kind of cool. There are a couple places where the entrances into the community could really continue to establish it. I like the fact I think it was a class 2 bike lane that got put in, nearly 2-3 decades ago on on Camino Corto. But I mean, trying to do something like that on Picasso, I mean, it almost seems to just belie what I would think that like this common sense of what you're trying to accomplish with bike lanes. Is Picasso not in some sense already a bike lane? So then I guess the question is that what is this doing to parking also, which is of course something that when we were constantly trying to balance I am just so continually flabbergasted at the response that the county ends up coming to from all these. I guess I'm voting no today, given the list that Jonathan has, but that's okay. I mean, I figure everyone else will vote yes, but that's fine. But I'm voting no. So.
Well, thanks, Director Freeman. And I think regardless, it'll be good for us to set up a follow-up meeting and try and learn more. I know definitely, at least how I've understood it, is that they'll be applying as part of the grant process, but I don't think that they do the actual engineering work about how some of these things get implemented until further on in the process. So I definitely want to stay engaged to be able to provide input into that. Are there any other board comments? All right, I'm not seeing any, but I also think I've got some camera lag going on, so flag me if you got something to say. But otherwise, I would entertain a motion if anyone has one.
I'll move approval of this item. And essentially the item is to approve a letter of support for the ATP grant application.
All right, there's a motion made by Thurlow. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I'll bring it back to the public. Is there any public comment regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. And if there's no further board discussion, we'll call the question and go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
No.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Hedges?
Yes.
Director Thurlow?
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 5-1 with 1 absence as well. Thanks, everyone. And I do want to say, just in general, or reiterate that I am very thankful that the county is putting attention to this. I think this is really important and great to hear that there is this potential for this increased dollars coming into our community, grant dollars for such an important topic. So we'll move now to item 4.6, which is the district COVID-19 response. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan if you have any updates to share.
Great. No major updates right now. The board directed us to work on the expanded street outreach, which we are working on. But when Deborah and I met with United Way, we thought it would be good to roll that into the Ivy Beautiful contract, since we might need someone to help provide support to that service anyways. You'll for the service the next board meeting. But besides that, I'm saying that my connection's unstable. Besides that, I know Deborah's working on a update of where our COVID-19 housing mediation mailer, what it resulted in terms of responses. We talked about that earlier today, but that's not prepared. So not a big update. Everything is still, moving good in the status quo, and the homelessness task force that a few of us have been participating in has been making good progress. There's a cleanup of the encampments happening, I think August, 12 or 11? Not today is 12 or 11. I think it's happening in a week from August 12th and 11. And so that's going to happen. Look out for that. We might have a dumpster in our parking lot placed to help with that effort. But other than that, I don't have any more updates on this item.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that update. I see George waving. Go ahead, George, and then after that, I'll go over to Ethan.
Jonathan, can you kind of give us a person on the ground? And I apologize. I am in Isla Vista a little bit. One of the things I'm discovering is the quality of the information about the cases in Isla Vista is not real good. Everybody, the university as well as the county, are both saying they don't want to disclose anything that could identify people. And so it's really hard. I mean, I ran by you a story I had heard about a business, and I'm a little bit at a loss because apparently we're going to be the last ones to know when things happen in Isla Vista, and it's clear based on what's happened in the last week that we're starting to see a trend that's not real good. So I guess my long question here is, can you kind of give me and maybe some of the other board members can give me their sense of, what's going on the ground? Are there still these huge parties going on? Is there, there was a discussion of this big party at Elwood Beach. Are we seeing the uptick in cases? I'm hearing stories about students going to Ventura to get tested so they stay off the radar. Can you help me a little, Jonathan and other board members?
Yeah, I can help on some of those. I think Ethan has his hand up too. I mean, I get all my data from the county public health department stats dashboard, which obviously has come out that some of the data is, lagging, but overall, I'm just going off of that. In terms of what's going on in Isla Vista, I don't have, I'm not everywhere at once. I'm usually at home. But it definitely, from my vantage point, there definitely still are large gatherings happening that shouldn't be. And, we're working on the messaging campaign that we developed, and those ads are out there. So hopefully they're reaching people, but that's what we're trying to do. We're letting people know, do not gather. Here's the risk of gathering. Here's why. But beyond that, I feel we aren't going to get a lot of the information right away. Some of it is just something that people like us will not just be given. We will need to seek out a lot of it. Some of it we get updates from the county. I know Spencer participates in the county briefings at 2:30 on Thursday, and those have but they haven't been Isla Vista centric at all. And some discussions happen throughout the week at the different calls that they're going on. And at one IV Community Network call, I think a lot of us were on that one, where Associated Students Vice President brought up the issue of some people who attend institutions of higher education that aren't located in Santa Barbara but are moving here to go to school remotely. We heard of that discussion during IVCN. I think you're right. I personally don't get issues like Woodstocks like you had brought up. I hadn't heard of anything like that. So but I could tell you that mask usage seems to be up in town compared to a month ago. I could say that. I don't think it's in a good place from my personal opinion, but it's up from how it was before. I think Ethan would.
I was just going to jump in and say, George, the call Jonathan's referring to is a direct briefing with the public health officer and the public health department chief. So if you have any questions that you want answered by them, you can ask questions through Jonathan. That's something other council members have been doing as well. So just throwing that out there, as far as specific questions you may have. And Ethan, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add to that, or if you had a separate question.
Yes, thank you. I have one thing to add, and then I have some questions. I think my observations on the ground are similar to Jonathan's. I don't think that there are many large parties, but there is a threat anytime that we are getting close with people that we don't directly live with. And that's something that we are seeing a lot of, and that all of us have to be careful to reduce those contacts as much as possible. There are lots of smaller social gatherings, and surely some of them, I'm sure, involve just folks who live in the same household, but not always. So I think that we do need to just continue to better educate people about the risks associated with that. But there's definitely quarantine fatigue, and that's not unique to our community. That's something that's being experienced everywhere. So we just need to continue to remind our neighbors about the risks that do exist. I think that a lot of the behavior that we do see in Isla Vista is similar to other communities, but it's just more dangerous because we do live closer together with each other. And we're just also being a younger population, we may not be as prone to symptoms if we do come into contact with the virus, but all of us are capable of spreading it to folks who can have complications. So I think that's what makes us unique, and I'm glad that we are conducting messaging on that specific topic. My first question is, how are we doing as far as getting together a volunteer corps to work on these messaging operations?
So we didn't get much response to that. We got 2 people interested in volunteering in any capacity to help us.
Got it. So I think call on us to help do a better push on that, because I do think that there are folks who will step up. So I'll inquire with you after the meeting about how we can do a second push for that, if that's something that my colleagues think we should continue to push for.
Yeah, I would just say I definitely agree with that, and I think we should give it a little bit more of a try.
Yes, and then my next question for this item is, at our last meeting, I believe we voted to reach out to the park district about partnering to provide services to folks in the park. I heard you mention the cleanup efforts before, which are great. That's awesome to hear. But as far as outreach in the parks, did we receive any communication back from the park district?
Yes, no, that we are actively working on that one, and we've met with them twice about it. We have another meeting tomorrow to talk more between Emily and Kimberly and I, and what can be provided. So, hope at August 25th, I guess we might combine it with the Ivy Beautiful service.
Got it.
So, like an umbrella contract, like Deborah had mentioned earlier. So,
sounds good. Thank you. And I guess I have a question as well. And this is for George and Kirsten, if you're so inclined. The governor released the interim guidance for higher ed on Friday. What changes have occurred in UCSB's plan, if any, that can be released right now?
Kirsten should answer that. She's on the committee that's discussing that.
So I can think I can address that. So yes, we were really pleased that the governor and the CDPH released the guidelines, the higher education guidelines on Friday. We were all looking forward to them. And I can tell you that the campus is still in very active active conversations about what our fall quarter is going to look like. We know, according to CDPH, that there's a strong, and because our county is on the monitoring list, that means that instruction will be remote primarily, unless there are labs or other things that would require Santa Barbara Public Health Department to give an exemption. And we also know that CDPH has indicated that they strongly are in support of single occupancy for campus housing. So the campus hasn't come up with final plans, but they're daily conversations on all of these issues. And our quarter does start October 1st. So we still have a little bit of time. But as soon as the campus has made those final decisions of what the fall will look like, we'll let everyone know, of course.
Thank you.
Can I make another comment, or should I wait until you call for public comment?
Kirsten, I think that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say that I want to push back a little bit on George, my good friend. I don't think that there's any effort to try and hide the cases in Isla Vista by student health or the county of public health, who I shouldn't speak for, but I'll just say. I think that there's HIPAA concerns. And in the same way that at the county press conference today, public health talked about the procedures and the processes by which employer works with an employee who tests positive, there are confidentiality issues. So our student health test students that come and are reporting symptoms, and we report those numbers, and we work closely with public health. And there is discrepancy in the numbers that our student health sees and the county of Santa Barbara sees, and part of that is because we only see students. And then there are a number of students that are going to Ventura, and our understanding is that is because the Ventura system of testing is a little bit different than Santa Barbara, and it's more accessible to a greater number of people and doesn't have the same tiered requirements that the state has put on Santa Barbara County Public Health here at Earl Warren. I hope that makes sense. I'm pushing back on you, George.
Thank you for that comment. And I guess I would just add, because I know there has been a lot of discussion about that aspect of things too. One of the things that we're going to be doing with our advertisements is a specific targeted ad about what to do if you or one of your housemates does test positive for COVID. And associated with that would definitely share, because I know that there's been a lot, both in the national press and I think to some degree the local discussion too about testing capacity. And I think the message should be very clear that if you do have reason to believe that you may have contracted COVID, there is testing available that you can access here locally. You don't have to go to Ventura. So definitely would just reiterate appreciate your comments because those are very legitimate privacy concerns that you bring up here. So. Is there any other board comment on the COVID response? Hearing none, we will close out this item and looking forward to some of those updates, especially regarding homelessness coming back at our next meeting. Okay, we'll move to item 5, which is reports. Do any members of the board have a report that they'd like to share? All right, seeing none. I think everything that I was going to share was talked about tonight. So we'll go on to 5.2, reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Do you have any committee reports? No. So we'll go to 5.3, report from district council.
Nothing additional to report.
Thank you. We'll go to 5.4, report from general manager.
We've got a couple things. The first one is that we've been working a lot on finalizing the transportation, the STEP grant, and that's due at the end of the month, and it'll come also before the board on August 25th to bless before we send it off. The safe parking program is ready to go, and we're looking for applicants, and I think there's still spots available. So if anyone knows people needing service, that's they don't have anyone yet, so they're still looking. Our interns, Daniel, Arabella, Ariana, and Bruce, they have finished their internship as of Friday of last week, and so we had our session with them and thanked them for the huge contributions they made to the district. And they've got exciting paths moving forward that the internship helped them get going on. So we're proud of that being done. And now we're going to start working on the next iteration of the internship, which might look a little different, just based on our new needs as a district and the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a great meeting with the organization called LA Compost, which is a similar program, nonprofit organization in the city of Los Angeles, where we learned a lot from them on how we can improve our program. And they actually wanted to learn from us on how we engage college students, which is an area of need from them. And they've asked us to help, be part of a statewide group of composting to share information. So that was exciting to have helped that program develop more in that way. We attended the LAFCO meeting on Thursday, and we received the legal opinion, which I forwarded to the board and Ross. But I haven't had a chance to really look at it closely, to be honest. And lastly, as you approved on the agenda today, we're doing our last big push for the census between now and the end of September, with a big ad buy that the Santa Barbara Foundation has previously funded us for, and I think there'll be a bigger, we're going to have another proposal to finish out that grant and do an additional push at our next meeting. So that's my update.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Very cool to hear. Okay, unless there's anything else from the board, our next meeting will take place at 6 p.m. on August 25th here over Zoom, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Looks like you have a very eager Director Thurlow to speak.
Yeah, just one last thing. Can I make just a short comment to Jonathan?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I can't see you guys.
That's all right. Jonathan, I think it would be super if we created certificates for each one of our interns that were on our, sort of had our official seal on it. And it may seem hokey to us, but for a college student to have something from a government agency indicating that they provided services, I think they would love it, and it's not too much for us, I think.
Yeah, we could definitely work on that. That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Great addition. And actually, I do have one more question for Jonathan. Do you have a timeline on when the internship program applications will be released?
You know, we're wanting to rewrite the job descriptions a little bit and rethink having general interns compared to specific roles. So hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks we'll release it, and then starting in early October. And we're thinking of doing a year internship potentially, since it did work really well with this last batch.
Great, yeah. Well, big supporter of that and all the development that you guys do, you and Deborah. So thanks for that. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Bertrand, seconded by Thurlow. Any other public comments or discussion? We'll do a roll call vote.
I'm muted. Oops. Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Hedges?
Yes.
Director Thurlow?
Yes.
Dr. Nguyen?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. We will see everyone on August 25th. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.